This is Assay Culture. We're going to discuss what they don't want you to know about the influence of music, which is the effects of violent music on children and adolescents, by Donald Roberts, Peter Christensen and Douglas Gentile. Now, I advise that people sort of search up on whether it's DuckDuckGo, Yahoo or Google and download this document and read it, especially for listeners and artists. Artists, for those who've got a bit of common sense, they probably want to read this document because there's a lot of gems in it, which if you know what you're doing, it can actually enhance your career and help you make money. There's information in power. So that's all I've got to say about that. So let's just jump into it anyway. As you can see, the three of the singers that I've mentioned before, Bruce Springsteen, Beethoven and Van Morrison, they're there, but there's two others that I mentioned but that came from a different source. I just basically searched it up on the internet and I saw those two and I just included them. So let's just jump into it. So the first bit I want to get into is, and you can tell that I've got some highlights on the side just as a reminder for myself, but I don't mind it popping up on the screen and sharing it with you. The first highlighted paragraph says, however, it is likely that most students underestimate the amount of time children and adolescents may listen to music because music is so often a secondary background activity for many other activities, such as reading, studying, talking, driving, and doing housework. Music's tendency to slip between foreground and background raises questions about what kind of listening should be counted as true exposure. And I had to put some highlights on that and I'll jump into it. And here it's basically talking about the subconscious level. So although music is often listened to in the background while you're doing whatever you're doing, like relaxing or whatever, music itself is set, it sets the actual temperament, it sets the mood, and it actually enhances the way in which whatever activity you're carrying out is done. So it's just a way to set the mood and set the temperament as you go about studying or doing some other chore. So that's basically what that is saying. So these are just like my own little interpretations. So let's just quickly move on. Here we've got some more here for you. So this one says adolescents devote more time to music than school age children. And older adolescents devote more time to music than younger adolescents, which is important because what he's saying here is that the young teenagers devote more time to music than kids, probably junior school or even much younger sort of teenagers if you like. And the older teenagers devote more to music than the younger teenagers, which stand to reason because there's a situation where, when you're younger, you don't tend to listen to music with the same frequency and at the same level as you would do as you get older and you learn more words and you get more exposed to the world. Your sort of interest in music will increase. So another one says the early teen years mark a sharp increase in the amount of time kids devote to popular music, and the trend towards higher levels of music consumption continues through to the end of high school, or in Jamaica's case, they say, secondary school in the UK rather. In Jamaica and in American countries, other countries like that, they say high school, but in the UK, secondary school is the same thing. We mentioned Jamaica because obviously this is all about the discussion, if you remember, regarding artists and other politicians arguing that there is no correlation between violent lyrics or violent music and crime or violence in society. And as everyone with a brain in their head been arguing or debating, it's not even a debate, it's more like arguing or defending a point, which is we've never ever said, or no one with an intelligent mind ever said that music is the cause of violence. What we are saying is music influences that, and this whole research document that I'm showing you on the screen now goes into the intricacies of it and break it down minutely. You'll see that every single point I've sort of highlighted, there are points when they attribute who is come to that conclusion based on their study and what year they did it. So, as you go along, I don't really highlight the person's name because I don't want to be confused between what I'm trying to say and the authors or the researchers, so to speak. But, it's on your screen and you can pause and read in your own time. So this bit here is a very important bit because what it's showing you is that, just as I said before, as adolescents or teenagers get older, they devote more time to music. By the time girls reach to high school, they listen to music much more substantially than boys, which is basically what this is saying here. And African American youths tend to listen more than whites. Okay, that's not the issue we're debating here, but it's just a good little information to note going forward. So we jump into the next bit. For adolescents especially, the pleasure can be intense and tends to be associated with most intense peak experience of life. So what that is basically saying is, say for instance, in terms of the music pleasure, music listening pleasure, is especially intense in the adolescence years. The most intense music pleasure occurs during the peak experience of their lives. So, you know what I mean, as they, peak in their experiences as they go through life, the music tends to become more and more relevant to them, and they focus on it more, so to speak. Again, here it says, and I put in red, you might notice some bits are in amber, some bits are in red, and some bits are in blue. The reason why I color code it is to sort of show you the gravity of the importance or the impact of music itself in terms of what we're discussing, the subject matter. So here, which I've highlighted in red, you'll see LOL stated that music promotes experiences of the extreme for its makers and listeners, turning the perilous emotional edges, vulnerabilities, triumph, celebrations and antagonisms of life into hypnotic, reflective tempos that can be experienced privately or shared with others. Now, I know you don't see me going up here, the reason why, because I get this pop-up, but we're going to go into it. So my side note on that was, for artists in particular, going through emotions expresses this through their music. So as an artist experiences certain things in life or in their community or their surrounding, they obviously will put it into music and they'll show it in that respect. Listeners, on the other hand, will gravitate to that particular experience of an artist that they put in art or put in their music, and empathize in solidarity with the artist, because they are obviously facing a similar ordeal or a similar situation. So if an artist is singing about struggling in the ghetto and the system is fighting them or whatever it may be, that artist is expressing that in music because that's something that he's witnessing or observing around him, or he himself is going through it. And the listener in turn gravitates to that particular music because they can understand it, they're going through a similar experience, and so they can empathize and understand it, and they'll gravitate to it because they can relate to it. So that's basically what that bit there is saying. Okay, so let's just move on. So we're going to move down here. Effective uses. So the major difference between popular music and other media of lives in music's ability to enhance or modify mood, and this is a smoking gun right here. So for people who are still in denial that music doesn't influence it doesn't influence violence or crime in society at all, there's no correlation between the two, this is just basically just pop that balloon and show that those people are thinking in terms of fallacy. So basically saying the influence is at work here, because this is kind of self-explanatory, to be honest. I don't need to go into too much detail with it, but here's another one. Factors analysis revealed 3 general trends. 1. Atmosphere creation and mood control. 2. Silence filling and passing the time. And 3. Attention to lyrics. Of the 3 types of uses, atmosphere creation and mood control emerged as the most important, with time filling second and attention to lyrics a distant third. So you might look at this and thinking, well, you see, if you have music which has got violent lyrics in it, that's a distant third. Yeah, but it might be a distant third, but it doesn't mean it's dismissive or it's negated in any way. They're just sort of comparing these particular 3 things and showing you where the lyrical part or the lyrical content of the media lies. So here we're saying that it's third particular in comparison, but nevertheless a present factor that cannot be denied, which is basically what I've just explained anyway. These side notes here is basically just to remind me as I do this video of what point I want to add going forwards, because there's one thing to read these documents and digest them and highlight the bits I want to talk about, but then each time you can interpret it differently, and everyone has their own interpretation, but it's going to be within the sphere of what the authors and researchers are saying. So I just wanted to remind myself of what I particularly want to discuss. So let's just quickly move on. Labeled the privacy of affect. For most young people, music use is driven primarily by the motivation and control mood and enhance emotional states. Music's ability to communicate emotion and influence mood has been widely noted. So there you are, the influence comes up again, which in terms of mood. Even preschoolers and infants as young as 8 months can reliably discriminate or differentiate, if you like, between happy and sad music. That is amazing. And basically what I'm saying is, when they say primacy effect, what they're basically saying is music is the most important or ranks top for young people in terms of motivation, emotion and mood. So that's why they put that primacy of effect, or affect rather, in speech marks, so, or inverted commas, whichever you prefer, which is basically what they're saying there. Studies of mood induction often use music in order to change people's mood. That's just basically reinforcing what I've just said up here, or what's just been written up here, and what my side notes have said as well. So let's scroll down. Let's move on to this bit here. So research shows that males are more likely than females to use music as a tool to increase their energy level and seek stimulation, that is, to get pumped up. Now that is true, but it's not just amongst males, but that's what the study is researching, which is quite interesting. So as I say, DJs who's got a bit of smarts, if they want to download this document and read it and learn some information on psychology, I think it can help you get some number one hits if you know what you're looking for and you know what you're doing. That's all I'm saying. Nothing is organic, or nothing is, should I say, lucky. Yeah, you have to construct things in a particular way to get a particular result. That's so simple. So here we are. So I put a side note that says DJs uses certain music to get the party lit and the energy hyped. So even though this is talking about males in particular, you can see other scenarios where they use this to change the mood or stimulate the mood of people, whether male or female. But they're just saying in males in particular, it's a thing. Military use music to boost morale and increase fearlessness, and as you know, I've mentioned earlier where the Coldstream Guard and the Chinese troops and what they've done. So this is just another example that helps solidify what I've been saying. So in contrast, females are more likely than males to listen to lift their spirits when they are sad or lonely, or even to dwell on a somber mood. So again, even though you might say, in this particular case, these are people who are already predisposed, if you like, in terms of their mood or their character or their attitude, there is no influence. There is, because the influence comes in where you're looking for that reinforcement of a situation that you're already feeling or experiencing. Again, it says may will also match music with their negative moods. So in other words, what they're saying is, let's say someone is in a negative mood or aggressive mood or whatever mood they're in, they will sort music out which would reinforce and stimulate that type of match that energy, if you like. And my side note to that is, I obviously predisposed wrong here for some reason. Anyway, while someone is already predisposed of a certain negative or positive trait, seeking affirmation or solace in music further influences and deepens their mental state negatively or positively going forward. So whether they're doing it, in this case they're talking about in a negative situation, in terms of the negative mood of males, but this could apply to females as well. Again, this is a research about young children and teenagers. So you have to bear in mind that they're going to start to group and separate it in terms of females, males, and different types of age groups, and young infants and so on. So in one study, a typical heavy metal fan said he sought out full-blown thrashing metal when he was mad at the world. We've seen situations where, for instance, when people are down and they feel angry, they listen to that music for that reinforcement, so they can relate and empathize with it. Because I think subconsciously, people who listen to this type of music, or any type of music for that matter, that matches a particular mood that a person might be in, not necessarily children or adolescents, they listen to that music because of the state of mind or the ordeal or the experience they're currently in. because it makes them feel like they're not alone. They're not the only one going through it. See, this is why I'm a fan of this artist or that artist, because they're singing about a situation that I'm currently going through and I'm currently feeling or stressing or depressed over. So that's sort of more of a reinforcement, if you like, for listeners. So that makes logical sense. So moving on, in one study, Rauner in 1990, high school students were asked to rank music against several other possible sources of moral and social guidance, including parents, teachers, friends, church leaders, and co-workers. 16% ranked music among the top 3 sources of moral guidance, and 24% placed music in the top 3 for information on social interaction. So this is very self-explanatory right here, this bit. So there's not much more to say than that. All of this is just basically drilling home to those who are in denial the connection between music and the influence of music and the effects on society at large, whether they be infants, whether they be children or adolescents or teenagers or grown folks. You know, you can take it across the board, but because we're particularly interested in young children and teenagers, this is the perfect research that I'm glad I found, because we're not too concerned about infants, because their brains isn't fully developed yet to sort of understand even some of the stuff they're listening. They only know the basic levels, even though that in itself is something that we can't, sort of stick to the side. We have to still be acutely aware of what infants are hearing or overhearing what adults are playing or teenagers are playing. So we're not dismissing that, but then you have the other spectrum, which is adults, that in most cases they can, and we're talking about grown, mature adults now, who can differentiate between art and music and real life situations, and they don't sort of let the two blur or conflate in any way. Whereas between children and adolescents, or the teenage years, if you like, that's where the problem lies. That's where they seem to be more into music and consume music and take literally or to heart the lyrics and the messaging of what music brings to them. And as teenagers, they go through certain little things, especially when they're going through puberty, they're going through breakups, they're experiencing a lot of things for the first time. Music is one of the primary source they draw on for some form of solace, if you like, and that is the danger zone where the lines get blurred, and in many cases it can influence them in some cases to act out on those feelings, if you like. So that's where the main concern is, and of course I've put my own highlights on it. So again, as I've said, good or bad messaging in lyrical content are memorized and internalized, which is true. How many fans can sing their artist's song lyrics word for word at a concert, or even just when you're among your friends? They know the words word for word. If you ask them something from a book they've read, they can't tell you line for line and word for word. But if the artist sings something, they can literally sing the whole song along with the artist or with the record, word for word, without skipping a beat. How many fans debate and discuss the meaning of lyrics with their friends, picking up on subliminal, clever wordplay and metaphors? Here, what this is saying basically is, you can have situations where, let's say, a particular artist release a music and there's some lyrical content in it, and you'll have some people, whether they're hip-hop heads or dancehall heads or whatever, they'll say, oh, that's a sub, I think he's speaking to this other artist. Even recently, one reggae artist mentioned certain thing on Twitter, and everyone is saying, oh, he's saying subliminals, or he's directing his messaging to this particular artist, even though the artist or the name wasn't called. But this is how much invested listeners are and fans are in music, and that's what basically this is saying. So there it is for black and white for you. It is important to note that heavy metal and rap fans report much higher levels of interest and attention to lyrics than do teens in general. Boom, self-explanatory. I don't have to say anymore. So for all those detractors and deniers and whosoever else, whatever, music don't this and music don't that, it's just art and it's just wordplay and metaphor. Don't be naive. If you're either being naive or you're being disingenuous, one of the two, and either way is not a good sign. So if you're naive, educate yourself, and if you're being disingenuous, you're being exposed either way. So that's it, checkmate. So let's move on anyway. Two general patterns seem to emerge from the research on attention to lyrics. First, the more important music is to an adolescent or teenager, the more importance he or she places on lyrics relative to other elements of music gratification. And second, attention to lyrics is highest among fans of oppositional or controversial music, whether it be 1960s protest, folk or rock, or the heavy metal and rap of today. So in other words, the more defiant, alienated and threatening to the mainstream a music type is, the more closely its fans follow the words. This is very interesting, and this just sort of brings home the point that I've been talking about. Whereas, just to go back to this point that I made up here, we're talking about, given the drama and antisocial elements in some rap and heavy metal music, fans still pay more attention to the lyrics. So in other words, even if the theme, as they're mentioning, might be antisocial or negative, that doesn't deter adolescents or children from gravitating to it anyway. I didn't really have much to say here because, as I say, this is self-explanatory. But it's amazing just to see how people has gone ahead and done the research and just basically highlight and show us that there is a strong correlation between music and and how teenagers and children perceive it in society. So moving on, articles have been written with headlines like "Hard rock music creates killer mice," based on high school science fair experiments in which groups of mice were trained to run mazes. Groups of mice listened to classical music, hard rock or no music. The classical mice became faster in running the maze, whereas the hard rock mice became slower. The student performing the study stated, "I had to cut my project short because all the hard rock mice killed each other. None of the classical mice did that." And that was a study that was done by at Eton during that time in the late 1990s. So this is okay, it's to do with mice, and you could argue that this is nothing to do with human beings, but let's not forget that in science, mice and monkeys are normally used to carry out certain experiments, which is really destined for humans, if you like, but they're using whatever similarities or situation they can use to simulate certain things in mice and monkeys and other sort of insects or animals or whatever, because we're in a different era now with animal rights and stuff like that. But the point being is, he's done this one is obviously not harming the mice, for those who are into animal rights. This is just basically exposing mice to music and putting them in a maze and see the way they behave in terms of working out the puzzle of how they can get to the other side and what happened. Of course, they end up killing each other, but in the wild, in nature, they do that to each other anyway, especially where there's scarcity of food or there's competition for territory or whatever it may be. So there we have it. Indeed, to be truly influenced, young people may need to go a step further and connect such messages to their own lives. The problem with such assumption is that several decades of communication research shows quite clearly that lyric interpretations is as much a process of construction as of recognition or discovery. Thus, what young people make or of popular songs depend not only on what the lyric brings to them, but also on what they bring to the lyrics. Now, this is very, very interesting, and for those who this might have flown over their head, because this is where I'm assuming a lot of people would say, well, this just goes to show you that people who are already in a particular mindset is drawn to music, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the music has any influence in them. Well, you're wrong. So here we are. What this is basically saying, if I just sum it up, is in terms of influence, saying only those that are already on a certain mindset listen to certain type of music is false, which is what a lot of people are saying. This shows that although some young people and teenagers listen to certain music that's in line with their experiences, actually proves influence is still active, as it reinforces their mood to connect the lyrics and tone of the music to their life experiences or character persona. So in other words, let's say you have a person and they say, well, he's been a bad man from day one. Because remember, this all started around dancehall and reggae music, or dancehall in particular, and people coming out and saying there is no correlation between, violent lyrics and violent music messaging and crimes or violence in society. This is basically, and they'll use, this is where they're basically trying to say, but if the person is criminal minded already, or if he's a bad man already, then he's just gonna, the music is just gonna enhance or exacerbate that. The music didn't force him to pick up a weapon and do whatever he's done. No, but at the end of the day, the music helped to make him remain that way. So in other words, let's say you have a bad man and you want to rehabilitate him, for him to turn away from those bad man ways, if you like. Him listening to music with lyrics about killing and shooting and this, that and the third, how is that music going to help him? So if you have a good friend or a family that you respect and they're an alcoholic, you're not going to have alcohol lying around. You're going to lock up the alcohol and you're going to hide it, because that person is going through a rehabilitation process and you're trying to help. And the way you can help is simply by not making things visible to the eye or easily accessed, or even for them to know where alcohol is stored. In many cases, it's not even stored in the same vicinity or premises that person is trying to rehabilitate is staying. And that's my problem. That's where, well, it's not my problem, that's where the problem is in terms of general society. Music is providing a forum or a platform for people who are already of a particular mindset, or is living in a particular lifestyle, or is already involved in a particular situation. How are they're just deepening their situation and worsening it. That's what that is doing, and that's the point we're trying to make here. So that's as clear, and if people don't understand that, I don't know how else to put it to you in black and white. This is an amazing article. I'm really glad I came across this. So let's move on. Violent music lyrics. Okay, some of these studies focus on aggressive and violent attitudes. For example, college students who prefer rap and heavy metal music report more hostile attitudes than students who prefer other styles of music, such as country, alternative, dancehall, or adult contemporary. That's not surprising. That's again self-explanatory, but it's just interesting to see this and to look at it and think, wow, this is the amount of the depth and gravity of influence of music. And while people keep harping on about, well, what about video, and what about visuals and stuff like that, we're going to get into that, so don't worry. That obviously has a place, and a matter of fact, just to be completely transparent and balanced, video and film actually visuals have a much more powerful impact than just the audio alone. So, but no one is arguing that, so there's no point bringing up that point. If someone is saying this is the situation and you call and something else and say, but that's worse though, it's like, yeah, but we're not debating whether this is worse than that. What we're saying is this is bad and we need to tackle this as well as that. That's what we're saying. You can't separate the two and say, well, because this is bad, you must ignore this one because this is the lesser of two evil. You can't ignore the lesser of two evil. You either deal with evil or you don't. And I'm not saying this to say music is evil. It can be, there's good positive music and there's bad negative music, and it's just as simple as that. Yeah, I don't have to get into more semantics than that for anyone. Again, we go ahead. Fans of rap music tend to be more distrustful than fans of other styles, and heavy metal fans tend to hold more negative attitudes towards women. There's another situation for you. This is amazing. So then what this is telling me is, so how about women who love heavy metal music? Where does that leave them exactly in this scenario? That's interesting. But let's just move on. In 2 more experiments, students who heard the violent songs were more likely to complete more fragments as aggressive words than as non-aggressive words. That's interesting. So basically what they're saying is, if you have someone who is already listening to negative or violent or aggressive music, if you give them a word or particular word puzzles and say you give them the 2 first words, which is KI, and say there's 2 blank spaces at the end, fill in the missing letters, they're likely to fill it in with LL, because this is the algorithm on YouTube. I don't want to say the word, but if you put in KI and say what's the other 2 words that's missing, there's only 2, they'll put in LL as opposed to SS. So what happens is, people who listen to certain type of music will more likely put in SS than people who listen to violent, aggressive. So this is the psyche, this is the influence of how powerful music is. Let's not get it twisted. Stop being an ostrich and burying your head in the sand. Let's stop this denial. And all those politicians and artists and other people defending the negative and violent lyrics in music, wake up and realize that you're in fallacy. You're living in cuckoo land. You're in a bubble by yourself, and you need to burst that bubble and face reality. And the reality is, music and the lyrics in music is extremely powerful. Okay, so powerful that politicians, especially in Jamaica, uses it for their own, political benefits. Even in America, the last president, the 45th president, he used it. Well, he didn't use the music, but he aligned himself with certain rap artists. We know who they were, and they were up in the White House, and for whatever good or bad reasons, whether you agree or disagree, that's not the issue here. The issue here is, these politicians draw on these artists because these artists make music, and these music has huge sway in terms of mood and influence on their fans and the wider society, especially young minds and teenagers. And they know that if they have these rappers standing beside them or singing in the same vicinity as them, it could translate in more votes for them. You understand? So the politicians are well aware of how to exploit this for their own political gains. So we've seen it's done in Jamaica, we've seen it done in America. So let's not be naive here. And to be honest with you, it's kind of ironic when I hear a Jamaican politician go on YouTube and basically defend the defenseless. And as a politician, knowing that whether you're the opposition or not, you see how music is exploited for their own political gain, and then you're gonna sit up there and say it doesn't have any correlation between violence and music, and you're saying all the research shows. Well, this research shows the opposites. I don't know what research you've been looking at, but the one I'm looking at, that I'm transparently sharing with everyone, shows that the opposite of what he's saying. And I don't doubt that there's other research done that doesn't say there is no correlation between it, or that violent lyrics in music doesn't cause crime or cause violence in society. For a start, I keep repeating myself like a scratch CD or scratch record. No one said that music and violent lyrics in music causes crime or violence in society, especially in Jamaica. What we are saying is it has an influence, and you cannot discount that influence, because that influence could and can translate into violence, and we've seen real life examples of that, which I've mentioned. So we're not going to play that back and forth game, because the evidence is in and the writing is on the wall, and it's here in front of your eyes in black and white. So those with eyes, let them see. And that's it. There's other stuff about suicide and shooting. As I said, this thing is packed with solid information with people's name behind it, because these are credible people in the industry that's going around and doing this research. So it's for everyone to look at, both artists and and listeners. So let me just move forward, because there's so much I would say on this, but I'm aware of time. There is substantial evidence that adolescents who are depressed, angry, alienated, experiencing suicidal thoughts, having family problems, abusing drugs or alcohol, or having difficulty at school constitute a group that is particularly drawn to this sort of angry, nihilistic music that celebrates these troubled states and traits. Bam! That is the I don't know what to say, but hey, let me go into my notes. So in terms of aggression, those young people and teenagers of troubled and difficult backgrounds tend to seek out aggressive music that empathize with their plight. I've already said this earlier on anyway. Human nature is obvious, but the influences are present to assist the listener or fan in their solace. So in other words, what they're saying over here, that's human nature. It's human nature that when you're sad, you're going to listen to sad songs. When women is going through a breakup with a guy or with a partner, and they're feeling down and depressed and heartbroken, they're going to listen to sad songs, heartbroken songs and stuff like that. And when they're in love and their minds are in the clouds and all that kind of stuff, they're going to listen to music likewise to reinforce that mood. That's what they're saying. But either way, the influence is still there, because they want to be influenced in a particular way to reinforce the mood or the character or the experience that they're already in or facing or experiencing. So I don't know how to put it any clearer than that. And the only thing left for me to do is draw your diagram, and I'm not a draftsman, so draw the diagram in your mind. Okay, moving on. To immerse oneself in angry, desperate, depressing music is a poor strategy for coping with anger, despair and depression. Neuroscience suggests that brooding or dwelling on one's current emotional state is more likely to deepen the state rather than to alleviate it. And this is the killer blow. One of the killer blow. I don't know why I didn't put this in red highlights like above, because this is amazing. So let me just quickly translate that for those in the back. Basically what this is saying is, even though it's human nature, as I've mentioned up here, that people will immerse themselves in a particular type of music or messages in music because of the mood and the experience or situation that they're currently in, is not really a smart move. So in other words, if somebody is already depressed, rather than they seeking music of sadness and depression to listen to, it would be better for them to listen to upbeat music, positive music that takes their mind off of the situation they're in or the mood they're in, and sort of uplift them. A good example of this is typically, not all the way, but typically among women or females, if you like, when there's a breakup, you tend to find a group of females going to the rescue of the particular female or the particular person that's suffering the heartbreak, and say, come, let's go out to the club or to the party, enjoy yourself, dress up, take your mind off what you're going through, listen to some upbeat music, and do something the opposite of what you're feeling to alleviate yourself from the problem, which is the point I'm trying to make. And the reason why they're suggesting that is because they know that the influence is there to change the mood and to change their mind, rather than if you're sad and you're heartbroken because you just split up with your boyfriend or your partner, because we live in modern society, or your partner that you've been going out with 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years, whatever, and that's a lot. That's a lot of investment in time. So that's going to be a very hard and rough breakup. So rather than you drowning yourself in sorrow with music that's reinforcing how you feel, you're sinking and digging a deeper hole for yourself. So if you already feel like mentally you're in a hole, when you finish digging that hole, you're going to be in a deep well and you're going to be stuck. What you want is a situation where the opposite of how you feel to happen. In other words, to take you out of that mood, to lift your spirits, to make you feel objective, that this time will pass, you'll get over it, maybe it's for the best, so on and so forth. And that's basically what all this is saying. So again, it shows you the power and the influence of music. Okay, so if at this stage no one gets it, then you're there's no way I can help you. So just to finish off here, because there's a couple more pages, but I just stopped here. So in summary, it says, taken together, these studies suggest that the main effects of music may be carried by the emotional sound of the music rather than the lyrics. The effects of violent music lyrics do not appear to be nearly as powerful as the effects of other more visual violent media. So here basically what he's saying is interesting. He's saying that even though sound or the lyrical content of a music is powerful and it has influence, compared to visuals or video, it's not as powerful. This is another thing I've heard a lot of people use to defend violent lyrics in music and say, well, violent lyrics in music, there's no correlation between it. But then when we look at video and visuals, there is a clear, correlation between the two. And my answer to that is, yes, visuals and video is a more powerful medium or media in which to convey whatever mood or situation you want to convey. But that doesn't mean, and that doesn't say that lyrics and sound doesn't play a part, because the whole of this documentation is about music and the influence and the powerful influence and emotion it has to change moods, to change emotion, to change characteristics, to boost morale, to seek solace, to reinforce and wallow in your anger or your pity or whatever it may be. We can see how music plays a part. The only difference is the visuals. When you put the visuals to the music, it ingrains the messaging more. This is why it's no accident when a particular celebrity, for instance, may go ahead and say, you know what, there's a reason why they make music videos after they make music. And if you notice here, I've put some information in. So basically, visuals is like film or video have more powerful impact on people than music alone. That's true. This does not negate the effects and influence music bring, but rather shows which is more dominant when compared side by side. So in other words, you're not saying that visuals is more more powerful than sound or lyrics alone, so therefore lyrics is negated and it's not important. They're just saying, comparing the two side by side, this one is more powerful than the other. They're not equal and whatever. However, it is for this reason many artists follow up a new music release with a music video. The visuals further ingrain the messaging into the mind. So that's the point I'm trying to make there. I think with that said, I'm going to end it here.